The massive war cruiser Dominion's edge hung in the void like a predator waiting to strike. Its hull bore the scars of 1,000 battles, each mark telling a story of conquest across the galaxy. On the bridge, Captain Elena Vasquez stood before the main display, watching as her target came into view. "There it is," she whispered, her voice carrying across the silent bridge. The fortress of Kethvar. The structure before them defied comprehension. Built into the side of a dead moon, the fortress stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Its surface crawled with defensive weapons, shield generators, and docking bays large enough to house entire fleets. This was the stronghold of Warlord Kethvar the Eternal, a being so ancient and powerful that entire civilizations spoke his name only in whispers. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from the communications station, his voice tight, with barely controlled fear. "We're receiving transmission from the fortress." It's him." Elena's jaw tightened. She had known this moment would come eventually. The Galactic Alliance had tried diplomacy, trade agreements, even tribute payments. Nothing worked with the Warlord. He took what he wanted, when he wanted it, and left entire star systems as smoking ruins in his wake. The main screen flickered, and, suddenly, they were looking at a creature from nightmares. Kethvar stood 12 feet tall, his body a fusion of organic matter and ancient technology. For arms extended from his torso, each ending in claws that could tear through starship hull plating. His face was a mass of scarred flesh and glowing cybernetic implants, with 6 eyes that burned like dying stars. When he spoke, his voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Little human ship." Kethvar's words dripped with contempt. "You dare enter my domain? I have crushed empires that ruled before your species learned to make fire. Turn back now, or join the debris field that surrounds my fortress." Elena stepped forward, her chin raised in defiance. "Warlord Kethvar, I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Federation Navy. We come not as supplicants, but as equals. Our message is simple. Your reign of terror ends today." A sound like grinding metal filled the bridge speakers. It took Elena a moment to realize the Warlord was laughing. "Equals?" Kethvar's multiple eyes fixed on her image. "Child, I have lived for over 10,000 of your years. I have personally destroyed 67 different species. I have watched stars burn out and new ones be born. What could your pathetic race possibly offer that would interest me?" "A challenge," Elena replied simply. The laughter stopped. For the first time since the transmission began, Kethvar seemed genuinely surprised. His massive head tilted to one side, studying the human captain with new interest. "Explain." Elena had rehearsed this moment countless times during the journey to this remote system. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. The fate of humanity itself hung in the balance. "You've conquered everyone who faced you with superior numbers, better technology, or ancient wisdom," she said. "But you've never faced humanity. We don't have the strongest ships, the most advanced weapons, or the longest history. What we have is something you've forgotten in your 10,000 years of easy victories." "And what is that, little captain?" Desperation. Kethvar's cybernetic implants hummed as he processed this. Around his throne room, Elena could see dozens of different alien species serving as guards and advisors. All of them watched their master with a mixture of fear and reverence. None of them had ever seen anyone speak to the Warlord like this. "You interest me, human," Kethvar finally said. "Very well. I accept your challenge. But know this, I do not fight fair, and I do not show mercy. When you fail, as you inevitably will, I will reduce your homeworld to ash and scatter your people across the galaxy as slaves." "Understood," Elena nodded. "But when we win, you will withdraw from all human territories and cease your attacks on Alliance shipping. Permanently. When you win." The grinding laughter returned. "Your confidence is either admirable or insane. Perhaps both." "Very well, Captain Vasquez. In 3 days, you will bring your fleet to the Nexus system. There, we will settle this matter once and for all. Do not disappoint me by failing to appear." The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Elena could feel the eyes of her crew upon her, waiting for orders, waiting for some sign that their captain hadn't just condemned them all to death. "Captain," Commander Sarah Mitchell, the ship's first officer, approached carefully. With respect, what fleet? We have one heavy cruiser, 2 destroyers, and a handful of support ships. Our intelligence suggests Kethvar commands over 300 vessels, including dreadnoughts that could vaporize our entire force without breaking a sweat. Elena turned to face her crew, and, for the first time since the confrontation began, she smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Sarah, contact Admiral Harrison at Fleet Command. Tell him it's time to implement Operation Prometheus. Full authorization, my command codes. Mitchell's eyes widened. Captain, that operation was classified above my clearance level. What exactly are we talking about? Something we've been working on for the past 5 years, Elena replied. Ever since our first encounter with Kethvar's forces at the Centauri colonies. We knew this day would come, and we've been preparing. She moved to her command chair, bringing up a series of encrypted files on her personal display. The crew watched as their captain's fingers flew over the holographic interface, entering authorization codes and confirming protocols they'd never seen before. Helmsman, set course for the Icarus Research Facility. Maximum burn. Aye, Captain. ETA 36 hours at full speed. As the Dominion's edge turned away from the fortress and jumped to hyperspace, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. In 3 days, humanity would face its greatest challenge. They would stand against a being who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, who commanded technology beyond their understanding, and who had never known defeat. But Kethvar had made one crucial error. He assumed that humanity would face him the same way every other species had, with conventional military might, trying to match his superior numbers and technology. He had no idea what Operation Prometheus truly entailed. The hyperspace journey to Icarus Station gave Elena time to review the files she'd been carrying for years, waiting for this moment. The research data, the test results, the sacrifice of thousands of volunteers who had given everything to make this plan possible. As she read, her expression grew harder, more determined. Dr. Marcus Webb, the lead scientist on Project Prometheus, had been very clear about the risks. Captain, he had told her during their last meeting, what we're proposing goes against every ethical guideline in human space. We're talking about creating something that could destroy us as easily as it destroys our enemies. Are you certain this is the path we want to take? Elena had looked out the window of his laboratory at Earth spinning peacefully in space below. Somewhere out there, in the dark between the stars, Kethvar's fleet was growing stronger every day. More species fell under his control, more resources fed his war machine, more worlds burned at his command. Doctor, she had replied, if we don't do this, there won't be a humanity left to have ethics. Now, as her ship raced through hyperspace toward its destination, Elena wondered if she had made the right choice. Soon, she would find out if humanity's greatest gamble would pay off, or if it would lead to their extinction. The Icarus Research Facility materialized out of hyperspace like a ghost ship returning from the dead. Built inside a hollowed-out asteroid in a system so remote it didn't even have a name, the station had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for the past 5 years. Only a handful of people in the entire galaxy knew what went on inside those reinforced walls. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice crackled over the communications system as the Dominion's edge approached the docking bay. We received your transmission. I have to say, I was hoping we'd never need to implement the final phase. So was I, Doctor. Elena replied as her ship settled into the station's docking clamps. But Kethvar forced our hand. How long until the prototype is ready for field testing? There was a long pause before Webb answered. It's been ready for months, Captain. We've just been afraid to use it. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She had read the theoretical reports, understood the basic principles behind Project Prometheus. But hearing the fear in Webb's voice brought home the reality of what they were about to unleash. The docking bay doors sealed behind them with a finality that seemed ominous. As Elena made her way through the station's corridors, she noticed that many of the research staff refused to make eye contact. They knew what was coming, and they were terrified. Dr. Webb met her at the entrance to the main laboratory, his face drawn and pale. He had aged significantly since their last meeting, his hair now completely gray and deep lines etched around his eyes. The weight of what they had created was clearly taking its toll. Before we proceed, Captain, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. What we've built, it's not just a weapon. It's something else entirely. Something that might be too dangerous to use, even against an enemy like Kethvar. Elena studied the scientist's worried expression. Doctor, in 72 hours, humanity faces extinction. Whatever concerns you have about our creation, they pale in comparison to what Kethvar will do if we fail. Webb nodded slowly and led her deeper into the facility. They passed through multiple security checkpoints, each more sophisticated than the last. Biometric scanners, genetic sequencers, even psychic dampening fields designed to prevent telepathic intrusion. Whatever lay at the heart of Icarus Station, it was protected by every security measure human science could devise. The final door required both Elena's and Webb's authorization codes, entered simultaneously. As it slid open with a soft hiss, Elena stepped into a chamber that would haunt her dreams for the rest of her life. The room was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. In the center, suspended in a column of swirling energy, was something that made Elena's mind struggle to process what she was seeing. At first glance, it appeared to be a young human male, perhaps 20 years old, with dark hair and an athletic build. But, as she watched, his form seemed to shift and blur, as if reality itself couldn't quite decide what he was supposed to be. Subject 0, Webb said softly. The culmination of everything we've learned about human potential, alien technology, and the fundamental forces that bind the universe together. Elena moved closer to the containment field, studying the figure within. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful, but there was something about him that made her skin crawl. Power radiated from him like heat from a star, barely contained by the energy barriers surrounding him. Is he human? She asked. Yes and no, Webb replied. He was human once. A volunteer from the Special Forces, someone who understood the risks and chose to undergo the transformation anyway. But what he's become? Captain, we've given him abilities that make the most powerful aliens look like children playing with toys. As if responding to their conversation, the figure's eyes suddenly opened. They were completely black, like looking into the void between stars. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. Captain Vasquez, he said, though his lips barely moved. I've been waiting for you. Elena felt her blood turn to ice. How does he know my name? He knows many things, Webb explained nervously. The transformation didn't just give him physical abilities. It enhanced his mind beyond normal human limits. He can access information across quantum networks, see probability streams, even influence reality at the subatomic level. The figure in the containment field smiled, and Elena saw that his teeth were perfectly normal, perfectly human. Somehow, that made him even more terrifying. Dr. Webb worries that I'm too dangerous to be released, the being continued. He fears what I might become if my power grows beyond these barriers. But you and I both know the truth, don't we, Captain? Humanity has no choice. Kethvar must be stopped, no matter the cost. Elena found her voice. What do you call yourself? I am what I was created to be, he replied. I am humanity's answer to 10,000 years of fear. I am the weapon you forged from your own flesh and blood. You may call me Adam. The name sent a shiver through Elena's soul. Adam, the first human, according to ancient texts. But this Adam had been created not by divine will, but by human desperation and scientific ambition. What are you capable of? She asked. Adam's black eyes seemed to look right through her. Would you like a demonstration? Before Elena could answer, the containment field around Adam began to fluctuate. Warning alarms echoed through the chamber as the energy levels spiked beyond safe parameters. Dr. Webb ran to a control console, his fingers flying over the interface. Containment breach, he shouted. All personnel evacuate the laboratory immediately. But Adam raised one hand, and suddenly, the alarms fell silent. The containment field stabilized, its swirling energies returning to their normal pattern. When he spoke, his voice was calm, almost amused. Peace, Doctor. I have no intention of escaping before my purpose is fulfilled. But Captain Vasquez needed to see what her weapon can do. Elena stared at the being they had created, her mind reeling with the implications. If Adam could manipulate the station's systems with a thought, what could he do to Kethvar's fleet? What could he do to entire star systems if he chose to? The Warlord has agreed to meet us at the Nexus system, she said finally. Can you defeat him? Adam's smile widened, and, for a moment, Elena saw something that chilled her to the bone. Behind those black eyes was not just power, but hunger, a desire not just to win, but to utterly dominate. Captain, Adam said softly, when I am finished with Kethvar the Eternal, the galaxy will understand that humanity's time has begun, and those who opposed us will wish they had chosen differently. As Elena left the laboratory, her mind raced with questions and doubts. They had created something that might save humanity from Kethvar's tyranny. But, in doing so, had they created an even greater threat? And, once Adam was released from his containment, would they ever be able to control him again? The countdown to the confrontation at Nexus had begun. In less than 60 hours, humanity would either secure its place among the stars or face extinction. But, as Elena made her way back to her ship, she couldn't shake the feeling that victory might come at a price too terrible to imagine. The fate of the galaxy now rested in the hands of something that was no longer quite human, and no longer bound by human limitations. Whether that would prove to be humanity's salvation or its damnation remained to be seen. The journey to the Nexus system felt like traveling toward the end of the world. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Dominion's edge, watching the stars streak past in hyperspace while her mind struggled with the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. Behind them, hidden in the cargo bay within a specially designed containment unit, was Adam, their greatest weapon and possibly their greatest mistake. Captain, Commander Mitchell approached with a data pad in her hands. I've been reviewing the tactical assessments of the Nexus system. It's not good news. Elena turned from the viewport to study the information. The Nexus was a binary star system with 13 planets, most of them dead rocks scorched by radiation from the twin suns. What made it strategically important was the massive gravitational anomaly at the system's heart, a naturally occurring phenomenon that created stable hyperspace exit points from multiple directions. It was the perfect location for a large-scale fleet engagement. Intelligence estimates? Elena asked. Conservative projections put Kethvar's force at 320 vessels, Mitchell replied grimly. Dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, destroyer squadrons, and support craft. Total crew complement somewhere around 2 million beings from at least 40 different species. Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. 2 million lives, and that was just Kethvar's fleet. If this went wrong, if Adam proved unable to control his power or chose not to follow orders, the consequences would echo across the galaxy. And our forces? Admiral Harrison's task force jumped from Earth 12 hours ago. 27 ships total, including 3 heavy cruisers and the experimental carrier Prometheus. They should reach the Nexus approximately 6 hours after we do. Elena nodded, though the numbers made her stomach clench with anxiety. Even with their secret weapon, they were facing odds of more than 10 to 1. Everything depended on Adam, on a being they barely understood and certainly couldn't control. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice crackled over the intercom from the cargo bay. Could you come down here? We're experiencing some unusual readings from the containment unit. Elena exchanged a worried glance with Mitchell before heading for the lift. The cargo bay had been converted into a temporary laboratory, with monitoring equipment surrounding the massive containment pod that held Adam. As she entered, Elena noticed that several of the displays were flashing warning signals. What's the problem, Doctor? Webb looked haggard, his face drawn with exhaustion and worry. It's Adam, he said quietly. His energy output has been increasing steadily since we left Icarus Station. The containment field is holding, but barely. Elena approached the pod cautiously. Through the transparent aluminum viewing port, she could see Adam sitting in meditation pose, his eyes closed and his face serene. But the air around the containment unit seemed to shimmer with barely visible energy, and the deck plating beneath her feet vibrated with harmonic frequencies. Is he responding to proximity to the Nexus? She asked. That's our working theory, Webb replied. The gravitational anomalies in that system create unique subspace distortions. Adam's enhanced abilities seem to be resonating with those distortions, amplifying his power beyond anything we recorded during testing. Elena studied the readouts with growing concern. How much beyond? Webb's hands shook as he pointed to the energy displacement meters. Captain, These readings suggest that Adam's power output has increased by a factor of 12 since we left Icarus. If this continues, he'll be able to manipulate matter and energy on a planetary scale. The implications of that statement hit Elena like a physical blow. A being capable of planetary scale manipulation could reshape worlds, redirect the orbits of moons, or tear apart the fabric of space itself. They had created something that possessed the power of a god. "Doctor," she said quietly, "in your professional opinion, is there any way to shut Adam down if he becomes a threat?" Webb's silence was answer enough. A new voice suddenly filled the cargo bay, seeming to come from the air itself. "Captain Vasquez," Adam said, though his physical form remained motionless within the containment pod, "there is no need to fear me. I am the sword humanity has forged for this battle. I will not turn against those who created me." Elena felt her skin crawl as she realized Adam had been listening to their conversation. "How are you able to speak without activating the communication system?" The boundaries between different forms of energy become less relevant as one's understanding grows, Adam replied cryptically. "Sound, electromagnetic radiation, quantum fluctuations, all part of the same fundamental symphony. I simply chose to make my thoughts audible." Dr. Webb frantically checked his instruments. "Captain, the containment field is stable, but he's somehow projecting his voice through quantum resonance in the ship's hull plating. Theoretically impossible, but he's doing it anyway." "Adam," Elena said, addressing the pod directly, "we need to discuss the mission parameters. Kethvar is expecting a conventional fleet engagement. What exactly do you plan to do when we reach the Nexus?" The response came with what sounded almost like amusement. "Captain, Kethvar has spent 10,000 years growing confident in his superiority. He believes that raw power, advanced technology, and overwhelming numbers guarantee victory. I intend to teach him that there are forces in this universe he has never encountered." "That's not an answer," Elena pressed. "I need to know specifically what you're planning to do." There was a long pause before Adam responded. When he spoke again, his voice carried undertones that made Elena's bones ache with resonant frequency. "Very well, Captain. When we arrive at the Nexus, I will exit this containment and engage Kethvar's fleet directly. I will disable their weapons systems, their engines, and their life support. I will reach into the quantum structure of their ships and unmake them at the molecular level. And when Kethvar himself faces me, I will show him what true power looks like." Elena felt a chill of premonition. "And his crew? The 2 million beings serving under him?" "That," Adam said softly, "will depend on how quickly they choose to surrender." Dr. Webb grabbed Elena's arm, his face pale with terror. "Captain, we need to abort this mission. What we've created isn't a weapon, it's a force of nature. Adam isn't just planning to defeat Kethvar, he's planning to reshape the entire balance of power in the galaxy." Elena looked back at the containment pod, seeing Adam's serene expression through the viewing port. For a moment, she wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. But then, she thought about the burning colonies at Centauri, the millions of human lives already lost to Kethvar's aggression, and the billions more that would die if they failed to stop him. "Doctor," she said finally, "it's too late for second thoughts. We've made our choice, and now we have to see it through." The hyperspace alarms began chiming, indicating their approach to the Nexus system. Elena returned to the bridge with her mind churning with doubts and fears. In less than an hour, they would drop back into normal space and face the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called from the navigation station. "We're receiving a transmission from Admiral Harrison's task force. They've already engaged advanced elements of Kethvar's fleet." Elena's blood turned cold. "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Harrison's command center under emergency lighting. Damage reports scrolled across multiple displays, and Elena could hear the sound of distant explosions in the background. "Elena," Harrison's voice was tight with strain. "Kethvar didn't wait for the formal engagement. His forces have been hitting us with long-range bombardments for the past 2 hours. We've lost 3 destroyers and the heavy cruiser Intrepid. How soon can you deploy your secret weapon?" Elena felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like a physical burden. "Admiral, we'll be at the Nexus in 47 minutes. Hold your position until then." "Copy that. Harrison out." The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Elena stared at the tactical display showing the positions of their scattered forces. Red icons indicated damaged or destroyed human vessels, while the steady advance of Kethvar's fleet appeared as an unstoppable tide of hostile contacts. "Captain," Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom, sounding panicked. Adam's energy output just spiked again. The containment field is fluctuating beyond safe parameters. Elena felt her heart rate accelerate. How long until containment failure? At this rate? Maybe 30 minutes. Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Everything was falling apart before they even reached the battle zone. Their secret weapon was becoming unstable. Their fleet was taking heavy casualties, and they were about to face an enemy that had never known defeat in 10,000 years of warfare. "All hands," she announced over the ship's intercom. "Battle stations. We drop out of hyperspace in 30 minutes. As the crew scrambled to prepare for combat, Elena found herself thinking about Earth, about the billions of humans living their lives in peaceful ignorance of the cosmic forces gathering to determine their fate. If Adam succeeded, humanity would take its place as a major galactic power. If he failed, their species might not survive the next 24 hours. The hyperspace transition alarm sounded, and Elena felt the familiar disorientation as the Dominion's edge dropped back into normal space. Through the main viewport, the Nexus system spread out before them in all its terrible majesty. The twin stars burned like angry eyes, their gravitational fields creating visible distortions in space itself. And scattered throughout the system was the largest fleet Elena had ever seen. Kethvar's armada filled space from one end of the system to the other. Massive dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small city, advanced in perfect formation alongside clouds of smaller escort vessels. The sheer scale of the enemy force was overwhelming, a demonstration of military might that had conquered half the galaxy. Admiral Harrison's task force, bearing 27 Mark IV, Torres reported. "They're holding position near the fourth planet, but they're taking heavy fire." Elena could see the flashes of weapons fire even at this distance. The silent fireworks display of a naval engagement played out against the cosmic backdrop. Occasionally, a brighter flash would indicate the destruction of another ship, though from here it was impossible to tell if it was friend or foe. "Captain," Dr. Webb's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "Containment failure imminent. Adam's energy output is off the charts." Elena made her decision. "Release the containment field." "Captain, I must protest." "Do it, Doctor. Now." On the cargo bay monitors, Elena watched as the containment pod's energy barriers collapsed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Adam opened his eyes, and reality seemed to bend around him. The being that had once been human stood slowly, his movements causing visible ripples in space-time. As he stepped from the containment pod, the cargo bay itself seemed to expand, as if his presence required more room than normal physics would allow. "Adam," Elena spoke through the intercom. "This is Captain Vasquez. Can you hear me?" "Yes, Captain," came the reply, though Adam's lips didn't move. "I can hear everything. The screams of dying humans, the laughter of Kethvar as he watches your ships burn, the very fabric of space crying out in pain from the gravitational distortions in this system." Elena felt a chill at the alien quality in Adam's voice. "Can you stop him?" "Watch." Adam raised one hand, and suddenly, he was no longer in the cargo bay. Elena blinked, and he was standing on the bridge beside her, as if he had simply stepped through the walls of the ship. The crew members nearby stumbled backward in shock, their faces pale with fear. "Interesting," Adam murmured, studying the tactical displays. "Kethvar has positioned his dreadnoughts in a formation designed to maximize overlapping fields of fire. A textbook example of overwhelming force doctrine. He clearly doesn't expect any real resistance." Elena found her voice. "What are you going to do?" Adam's black eyes fixed on the main viewport, looking out at Kethvar's massive fleet. "I'm going to teach the galaxy that humanity's time has come." He stepped forward, and Elena realized with shock that he was walking toward the sealed blast doors leading to the ship's exterior. "Adam, wait." But it was too late. Adam passed through the reinforced bulkhead as if it were made of mist, leaving no trace of his passage except a faint shimmer in the air. Elena ran to the viewport, pressing her face against the transparent aluminum. Outside, floating in the vacuum of space without any protection, Adam hung motionless for a moment. Then he began to glow. The light started as a faint aura around his body, but it grew brighter and more intense with each passing second. Soon, Adam was blazing like a small star, his radiance visible even against the backdrop of the twin suns. "Captain," Torres called out in amazement, "I'm reading massive energy discharges from our position. Whatever he's doing, it's registering on sensors across the entire system." Elena watched in fascination and terror as Adam raised both hands toward Kethvar's fleet. Space itself seemed to respond to his will, bending and twisting in ways that hurt to look at directly. Then, the impossible happened. Throughout Kethvar's massive armada, ships began to simply stop. Their engines cut out, their weapons powered down, their shields collapsed. One by one, hundreds of vessels that had been advancing in perfect formation suddenly found themselves drifting helplessly in space. "How is he doing that?" Commander Mitchell whispered. Elena had no answer. They were witnessing something beyond conventional physics, beyond any technology she understood. Adam was reaching across millions of kilometers of space and shutting down an entire fleet through pure force of will. But that was only the beginning. As Elena watched, several of the smaller enemy vessels began to change. Their hull plating rippled like water, their superstructures twisted into new configurations. In a matter of minutes, sleek warships were transformed into twisted sculptures of metal and composite materials, their crews trapped inside chambers that no longer bore any resemblance to starship interiors. "My God," Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom from the cargo bay. "He's rewriting the molecular structure of their ships, changing the fundamental properties of matter itself." Elena felt sick as she realized the implications. The crews of those transformed vessels were still alive inside their metal prisons, but their ships were no longer capable of supporting life. They would suffocate slowly, trapped in chambers that had become their tombs. "Adam," she called out through the ship's external communication system, "you're killing innocent people." The response came not through speakers, but directly into her mind. "There are no innocents in Kethvar's fleet, Captain. Every being serving under him has participated in genocide, conquest, and the subjugation of peaceful worlds. They made their choice when they swore loyalty to a tyrant." Elena wanted to argue, but the tactical displays were showing results she couldn't ignore. Kethvar's mighty armada, which had seemed unstoppable minutes before, was now mostly disabled. Hundreds of ships drifted powerless through space, their crews sending desperate distress signals. But at the center of the formation, one massive dreadnought continued to advance. Its shields blazed with energy, its weapons charged and ready. Elena realized she was looking at Kethvar's flagship, a vessel so powerful that even Adam's reality-warping abilities couldn't shut it down completely. "Impressive," a new voice rumbled across all communication frequencies. Kethvar himself was broadcasting to the entire system. "In 10,000 years, no being has ever disabled my fleet so completely. You have my attention, human weapon. Let us speak face to face." Adam's glowing form suddenly accelerated toward the enemy flagship, crossing the space between them in seconds. Elena lost sight of him as he approached the massive vessel, but the sensor readings told the story of what happened next. Energy discharges unlike anything in human databases erupted around Kethvar's ship. The very fabric of space-time seemed to convulse as two unimaginable forces met in direct confrontation. For the first time since arriving at the Nexus, Elena began to wonder if they had finally met an enemy that even Adam couldn't overcome. The fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, now rested on the outcome of a battle between titans that defied comprehension. Elena could only watch and pray that their weapon would prove stronger than the galaxy's most ancient evil. The space around Kethvar's flagship erupted into chaos as two cosmic forces collided. Captain Elena Vasquez watched from the bridge of the Dominion's edge as reality itself seemed to tear and rebuild around the massive dreadnought. Energy discharges created visible rifts in space-time, and the twin stars of the Nexus system flickered as gravitational waves swept outward from the battle. "Captain," Lieutenant Torres called out, his voice shaking as he tried to make sense of his instruments. I'm reading temporal distortions, quantum flux cascades, and energy signatures that don't match anything in our databases. The sensors are having trouble maintaining a coherent picture of what's happening over there. Elena gripped the arms of her command chair, her knuckles white with tension. Through the main viewport, she could see Adam's blazing form circling Kethvar's ship like a miniature star. Each time he struck the vessel's shields, space itself convulsed with the impact. But the ancient dreadnought's defenses held, powered by technology that predated human civilization by millennia. Can we get a visual on the flagship's interior? Elena asked. Working on it, Torres replied, his fingers flying over his control console. The hull plating is interfering with our scanners, but I'm picking up massive energy buildups inside the ship. Whatever Kethvar is doing in there, it's drawing power from multiple fusion cores. Elena felt a chill of premonition. They had always known that Kethvar was more than just another warlord. The intelligence reports suggested he possessed personal abilities that went beyond conventional technology. If he was preparing to face Adam directly, the consequences could reshape the entire galaxy. On the external monitors, Elena watched as Adam suddenly stopped his assault on the flagship's shields. He hung motionless in space for a moment, his radiant form pulsing with barely contained energy. Then, to Elena's shock, he began to speak. And, somehow, his voice carried across the vacuum to reach every ship in the system. Kethvar the Eternal. Adam's words resonated with power that made the bridge deck plating vibrate. You have ruled through fear and overwhelming force for 10,000 years. Today, you face something you have never encountered, a being created specifically to end your reign of terror. The response came immediately, booming from Kethvar's flagship with a voice like grinding continents. Child of humanity, you are impressive but naive. I have consumed the power of dying stars, absorbed the knowledge of extinct civilizations, and forged my body from materials that exist beyond normal space-time. You are but the latest in a long line of would-be champions who thought they could challenge the Eternal. Elena shuddered at the alien quality in Kethvar's voice. This was not the same being she had spoken to days earlier. Something fundamental had changed, as if the Warlord had tapped into power sources that transformed his very nature. Adam, she called out through the external communication system. His energy readings are off the charts. Whatever he's done to himself, he's no longer operating within normal physical parameters. Adam's response carried a note of something Elena had never heard from him before, uncertainty. I can feel it, Captain. He has merged his consciousness with the quantum substrate of his ship, becoming one with 10,000 years of accumulated technology. This is not the same entity I expected to face. On the tactical displays, Elena watched as Kethvar's flagship began to transform. The hull plating shifted and flowed like liquid metal, reshaping itself into configurations that hurt to look at directly. Weapon ports opened in impossible geometries, their energy signatures suggesting power outputs that could crack planetary crusts. All human vessels, Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the communication system, maintain distance from the flagship. We're reading unstable quantum fields that could tear apart anything that gets too close. Elena watched in fascination and growing horror as the transformation continued. Kethvar's ship was becoming something beyond conventional starship design, a fusion of technology and consciousness that defied understanding. When the metamorphosis was complete, the vessel bore only passing resemblance to its original form. Behold, Kethvar's voice now seemed to come from the ship itself, the ultimate fusion of organic and artificial, of matter and energy, of present reality and quantum possibility. I am no longer merely a being who commands a fleet. I am become the fleet itself, every weapon, every sensor, every defensive system operating as extensions of my will. Adam's blazing form suddenly darted toward the transformed flagship, moving at speeds that left trails of burning space in his wake. When he struck the ship's new shields, the impact sent shockwaves rippling across the entire system. But, instead of damaging the vessel, the attack seemed to be absorbed into the ship's hull, adding to its power. Interesting, Kethvar mused, his voice now carrying harmonics that made Elena's bones ache. Your human weapon feeds on energy, manipulates matter through will alone. But I have spent millennia learning to digest and incorporate any force used against me. Strike me, and you only make me stronger. Elena felt her heart sink as she realized the implications. They had created Adam to be their ultimate weapon, but Kethvar had evolved beyond their worst projections. The Warlord wasn't just fighting Adam. He was learning from him, adapting to his abilities in real time. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom, tight with panic. I'm reading massive fluctuations in the quantum foam around the flagship. Kethvar isn't just absorbing Adam's attacks. He's using them to rewrite the fundamental constants of local space-time. Elena stared at the readings in disbelief. What does that mean in practical terms? It means he's creating a region of space where different physical laws apply, Webb replied. Gravity could be stronger or weaker, electromagnetic forces could operate differently. Even the speed of light could be variable. He's turning the battlefield into his personal domain. As if to demonstrate Webb's point, the space around Kethvar's ship began to ripple like water. The light from the twin stars bent at impossible angles, creating visual distortions that made Elena's eyes water. Several of the Warlord's own disabled vessels that had been drifting nearby suddenly imploded as local gravity fields spiked beyond tolerance. Adam seemed to realize his predicament. Instead of continuing his direct assault, he pulled back, his blazing form hovering at the edge of the distorted space. When he spoke, his voice carried notes of grudging respect. Clever, Ancient One. You have turned your own defeat into victory, using my power against me. But you underestimate humanity's greatest strength. And what is that? Kethvar asked with amusement. Our ability to adapt. Elena watched in amazement as Adam's appearance began to change. The brilliant white radiance surrounding him shifted, taking on new colors and patterns. His human form became less distinct, more fluid, as if he was learning to exist in the same state of quantum uncertainty that Kethvar had mastered. Captain, Commander Mitchell whispered, what's happening to him? Elena had no answer. They were witnessing a confrontation between beings that operated beyond normal understanding, entities that could reshape reality itself through pure will and accumulated power. The fact that Adam was adapting in real time suggested that his transformation at Icarus Station had been even more radical than they had imagined. The two cosmic entities circled each other in the distorted space around the flagship, neither willing to commit to another direct assault. Elena realized that both combatants were learning, evolving, becoming something more than they had been when the battle began. This is unprecedented. Kethvar's voice carried what sounded almost like excitement. In 10,000 years, no being has forced me to evolve beyond my established parameters. You are truly worthy of being called my equal, human weapon. I am not human, Adam replied, his voice now carrying harmonics that suggested multiple overlapping realities. I am what humanity becomes when we stop accepting limitations. Elena felt a chill at the alien quality in Adam's voice. Whatever he was becoming, it was moving further and further away from anything recognizable as human. She wondered if they would ever be able to bring him back, or if their creation was destined to transcend them entirely. The two entities suddenly rushed toward each other, meeting in a collision that sent energy waves rippling across the entire system. Where they clashed, space itself seemed to crack, revealing glimpses of bizarre geometries that existed outside normal dimensions. Captain, Torres called out in alarm. We're detecting massive gravitational anomalies. The twin stars are showing orbital perturbations. If this continues, the entire system could become gravitationally unstable. Elena felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. Not only were they risking human lives in this confrontation, but the battle itself was threatening the stability of the Nexus system. If the twin stars' orbits collapsed, the resulting gravitational catastrophe could affect neighboring systems. Adam, she called out through the communication system, you need to end this quickly. The battle is destabilizing the entire system. But Adam was no longer listening to human voices. He and Kethvar were locked in a struggle that transcended physical combat, their merged consciousnesses battling across multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. Elena could only watch helplessly as the two titans reshaped space and time around them. The flagship began to split apart, but not from damage, from transformation. Kethvar was redistributing his consciousness across multiple forms, creating dozens of smaller vessels from the mass of his original ship. Each one carried a fragment of his awareness, making him effectively immortal as long as any part survived. Adam responded by fragmenting himself as well, his blazing form splitting into multiple energy projections that could engage Kethvar's distributed fleet simultaneously. The battle became a complex dance of light and shadow, with dozens of individual confrontations playing out across the system. Elena realized with growing horror that they were no longer watching a battle between two beings, but the birth of an entirely new form of warfare. Both combatants had transcended their original limitations, becoming something that could exist in multiple states simultaneously. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice was barely a whisper over the intercom. The quantum distortions are spreading. Whatever they've become, they're affecting the fundamental structure of reality throughout the system. If this continues, the effects could propagate beyond the Nexus. Elena made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. All ships, prepare to withdraw from the system. We're pulling back to a safe distance. Captain, Admiral Harrison's voice crackled over the communication system. What about Adam? We can't just abandon him. Elena stared out at the battle raging across the system, watching as fragments of both entities clashed in displays of power that dwarfed stellar events. Admiral, she said quietly, I don't think Adam is something we can abandon or retrieve. He's become something beyond our ability to control or even communicate with. As the human fleet began its withdrawal, Elena took one last look at the system that had become the birthplace of a new form of existence. Whatever emerged victorious from this battle would reshape the galaxy's understanding of power and consciousness. The war between Kethvar the Eternal and humanity's ultimate weapon had evolved into something that neither side had anticipated, a transformation that would echo across the cosmos for millennia to come. 3 hours had passed since Captain Elena Vasquez ordered the human fleet to withdraw from the Nexus system. Now, maintaining position at the edge of the gravitational disturbance field, she watched through long-range sensors as the battle between Adam and Kethvar continued to rage with undiminished intensity. What had begun as a confrontation between two powerful beings had evolved into something that challenged the fundamental laws of physics. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom from his makeshift laboratory, strained with exhaustion and disbelief. The quantum distortions are still expanding. At current rates, they'll reach the heliopause within 6 hours. If they continue beyond that, neighboring star systems could be affected. Elena studied the tactical display showing the spreading waves of reality distortion. The twin stars of the Nexus were now orbiting each other in patterns that defied conventional physics, their gravitational fields twisted by the ongoing battle. Several planets had already been torn apart by the fluctuating forces, their debris forming glowing rings around the primary star. Any word from Adam? She asked, though she already knew the answer. No response to any communication attempts, Webb replied. I'm not even certain he exists as a discrete entity anymore. The sensor readings suggest he's distributed across multiple probability states simultaneously. Elena felt a hollow ache in her chest. They had created Adam to save humanity from Kethvar's tyranny, but, in doing so, they had unleashed forces beyond their comprehension or control. Their ultimate weapon had transcended them entirely, becoming something that might pose an even greater threat than the enemy they had sought to defeat. Captain, Commander Mitchell approached with a grim expression. Admiral Harrison is requesting a conference with all ship commanders. I think we need to start considering our options if this battle continues indefinitely. Elena nodded and made her way to the briefing room, where holographic displays showed the positions of their scattered fleet. 24 ships remained operational, with casualties mounting from the stress of maintaining position near the reality distortions. Several vessels had already reported structural damage from the gravitational fluctuations. Admiral Harrison's image appeared on the main display, his face showing the weight of impossible command decisions. Behind him, Elena could see his staff working frantically to process data from the ongoing battle. Ladies and gentlemen, Harrison began without preamble. We're facing a situation unlike anything in human military history. Our weapon has exceeded all parameters and is now engaged in a conflict that threatens the stability of local spacetime. I need recommendations from all commanders. Captain Torres of the heavy cruiser Intrepid spoke first. Admiral, my science officer believes the distortions could cascade beyond this system if they continue to expand. We might be looking at a chain reaction that affects dozens of inhabited worlds. And our responsibility to those worlds, added Captain Chun from the destroyer's swift arrow, may outweigh our loyalty to Adam. He's no longer following our orders or serving our interests. Elena felt the weight of their stares as the other commanders looked to her for guidance. She had initiated the project that created Adam, and, in many ways, the current situation was her responsibility. With respect to my fellow officers, she said carefully, we need to remember what brought us here. Kethvar has terrorized the galaxy for 10,000 years. His fleets have destroyed entire civilizations. If Adam can stop him, even at great cost, we may be preventing far greater suffering. But at what price? Captain Torres asked. If Adam wins this battle by becoming an even more powerful tyrant than Kethvar, have we really accomplished anything? Elena had been asking herself the same question for hours, but she had no good answer. They were witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, beings that existed beyond normal physical constraints, that could reshape reality through pure will. Whether such entities would be benevolent or malevolent toward lesser forms of life remained to be seen. Admiral, she continued, I recommend we maintain our position and observe. We owe it to the galaxy to see how this conflict resolves before making any irreversible decisions. Harrison nodded slowly. Very well. All ships will maintain current positions, but prepare contingency plans for immediate withdrawal if the distortions threaten to expand beyond the system. We'll reconvene in 12 hours or sooner if the situation changes dramatically. As the conference ended, Elena returned to the bridge to find her crew monitoring a series of new developments. The fragmented entities that Adam and Kethvar had become were beginning to coalesce again, drawing their distributed consciousnesses back together for what appeared to be a final confrontation. Captain, Lieutenant Torres called from his station. I'm detecting massive energy buildups from both combatants. Whatever they're preparing, it's drawing power from the quantum vacuum itself. Elena moved to the main viewport, watching as two brilliant forms took shape in the twisted space around the system's core. Adam had regained some semblance of his human appearance, but he now blazed with an inner light that seemed to contain entire galaxies. Across from him, Kethvar had consolidated himself into a form that defied description, part ship, part organism, part living force of nature. When the two entities spoke, their voices reached every ship in the fleet simultaneously, carrying across space without need for transmission. This has been educational. Kethvar's words rumbled with the power of colliding worlds. You have shown me new possibilities, new methods of existence beyond what I had imagined. For that, I am grateful. Adam's response carried harmonics that made Elena's consciousness ache. And you have taught me the true nature of power, Ancient One. Not the crude domination I was created to wield, but something far more profound. Elena felt a growing sense of dread as she listened to their exchange. Both entities sounded different now, changed by their prolonged battle. Whatever they had become, it was clear that neither was the being that had entered this conflict. But now, Adam continued, we must choose how this story ends. The galaxy watches, waiting to see which form of transcendence will emerge victorious. Indeed, Kethvar agreed. Shall we finish what we began? The two cosmic entities began to move toward each other with deliberate slowness, their forms building energy with each step. Elena realized she was watching the prelude to a final exchange that would determine the fate of countless worlds. All ships, she called over the fleet communication system, prepare for massive energy discharge. Shields to maximum, all non-essential personnel to emergency positions. But, as Adam and Kethvar approached their final confrontation, something unexpected happened. Instead of clashing in another display of devastating force, they stopped just short of contact. For a long moment, they simply studied each other with senses that transcended normal perception. Curious, Kethvar mused, his voice carrying overtones of genuine puzzlement. I find myself reluctant to destroy something so similar to what I have become. You are no longer merely human, just as I am no longer merely the being I once was. Adam's blazing form pulsed with complex patterns of light. We have both evolved beyond our origins, beyond the limitations that once defined us. Perhaps destruction is not the only possible outcome of this encounter. Elena felt her heart race as she began to understand what was happening. The two entities were recognizing each other as kindred spirits, beings that had transcended their original natures to become something entirely new. The battle was ending not in victory for either side, but in mutual recognition of shared evolution. What do you propose? Kethvar asked. The galaxy is vast, Adam replied. There are regions beyond the spiral arms where consciousness could explore new forms of existence without affecting lesser beings. We could establish domains there, continue our evolution without threatening the civilizations that gave birth to us. Elena felt a mixture of relief and loss as she realized what Adam was suggesting. He was proposing exile, self-imposed separation from the galaxy they had both outgrown. It was perhaps the only solution that didn't end in the destruction of everything they had sought to protect. Acceptable, Kethvar agreed after a long pause. But what of our followers, our servants and enemies? What becomes of them? Adam's response surprised Elena with its compassion. They returned to their lives, free to choose their own destinies without the shadow of either our protection or our dominance. The age of cosmic tyrants ends with us. Elena watched in amazement as Kethvar's distributed fleet began to power down their weapons systems. Across the system, thousands of alien beings who had served the Warlord for centuries suddenly found themselves released from his overwhelming presence. Many of them immediately began broadcasting surrender signals to the human fleet. Captain, Commander Mitchell whispered beside her, it's over. They're actually ending the conflict. But Elena knew it wasn't really over. It was a transformation. Adam and Kethvar were choosing to remove themselves from galactic civilization rather than dominate or destroy it. In a strange way, it was the most human decision Adam had made since his transformation. Citizens of the galaxy, Adam's voice reached every inhabited world simultaneously, carrying across space through methods that defied understanding. Today marks the end of an age of conquest and fear. Kethvar the Eternal, and I withdraw beyond the galactic rim, leaving you free to determine your own futures. We ask only that you remember us as beings who chose transcendence over tyranny. Kethvar's final message was briefer, but no less significant. My reign ends not in defeat, but in evolution. Those who serve me are released from their bonds. Those who oppose me need fear me no more. Seek wisdom in our departure. Elena watched through sensors as the two cosmic entities began to move away from the system, their forms gradually fading as they accelerated beyond the speed of light. The reality distortions they left behind slowly began to stabilize, allowing the twin stars to resume their normal orbital patterns. Captain, Dr. Webb's voice came over the intercom, filled with wonder and relief. The quantum distortions are dissipating. Local spacetime is returning to normal parameters. They're really leaving. Elena felt a complex mixture of emotions as she processed what had just occurred. Humanity had succeeded in stopping Kethvar's reign of terror, but at the cost of losing their greatest creation. Adam had transcended his origins so completely that he could no longer exist in the same reality as his creators. Admiral Harrison, she called over the communication system. This is Captain Vasquez. The immediate threat has been neutralized. Both entities have withdrawn from local space. We should begin coordinating relief efforts for the liberated populations. Copy that, Elena. Harrison's voice carried obvious relief. Outstanding work. Though I have to ask, do we consider this a victory? Elena looked out at the thousands of ships that had once served under Kethvar's command, now drifting helplessly in space awaiting rescue or surrender. She thought about the billions of beings across the galaxy who would wake up tomorrow in a universe suddenly free from 10,000 years of tyranny. Admiral, she said finally, I think we achieved something better than victory. We achieved transformation. As the human fleet began the long process of establishing contact with Kethvar's former subjects, Elena couldn't help but wonder what Adam and his ancient counterpart would become in the vast emptiness beyond the galaxy's edge. Perhaps they would continue to evolve, becoming something even more incomprehensible. Or perhaps they would find peace in their self-imposed exile. Either way, the galaxy had been forever changed by their brief encounter with beings who had transcended the normal boundaries of existence. The age of cosmic tyrants was over, replaced by something humanity was only beginning to understand. 6 months had passed since the event that galactic historians would later call the Great Transcendence. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed space station Harmony, watching as representatives from dozens of formerly enslaved species worked together to establish the first truly democratic galactic council. The irony was not lost on her. Humanity had inadvertently become the mediator in a galaxy suddenly free from 10,000 years of tyranny. Captain, Commander Mitchell approached with a data pad containing the day's reports. We've received confirmation that the last of Kethvar's forced labor camps have been liberated. The Zephyrian colonies are requesting technical assistance to rebuild their infrastructure. Elena nodded, accepting the pad and scanning through the information. The liberation efforts had been ongoing for months, with human ships serving as neutral arbiters in conflicts between former subjects of the Warlord's empire. It was delicate work, requiring diplomacy skills that most military officers had never needed to develop. Any word from the deep space monitoring stations? Elena asked. Mitchell's expression grew thoughtful. Station Epsilon reported another anomaly at the galaxy's edge last week. Brief energy signatures consistent with large-scale reality manipulation, then nothing. Whatever Adam and Kethvar are doing out there, they're still active. Elena felt a familiar mixture of concern and curiosity when she thought about their transcended creations. Long-range sensors occasionally detected evidence of their continued existence in the void beyond the galactic rim, but the signals were too distant and too alien for meaningful analysis. Sometimes she wondered if they were engaged in some cosmic project beyond human understanding, or if they were simply exploring new forms of existence in the endless dark. Captain Vasquez, a melodious voice called from behind her. Elena turned to see Ambassador Lyra approaching, her crystalline form reflecting the light from the station's windows in prismatic patterns. The Crystallians had been among Kethvar's most trusted advisors, their species' natural telepathic abilities making them ideal for coordinating his vast empire. Now they served as mediators in the complex negotiations surrounding the formation of the new galactic government. Ambassador, Elena replied with genuine warmth. Over the past months, she had developed a deep respect for the elegant alien's wisdom and diplomatic skills. How are the discussions progressing? Lyra's form shifted to a deeper blue, indicating mild concern. There are challenges, as expected. Many species still fear that another tyrant will emerge to fill the void left by Kethvar's departure. They look to humanity for reassurance, given your role in ending his reign. Elena sighed heavily. This was the burden she had not anticipated when they first confronted the ancient warlord. Humanity had never sought to become a galactic power, but their success in stopping Kethvar had thrust them into a position of unwanted leadership. Ambassador, we've made our position clear repeatedly. Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy. We want to be partners in building something better. I know, Lyra replied, her tone carrying harmonics of understanding. But many species have known only domination for countless generations. The concept of voluntary cooperation is alien to them. They expect someone to seize control eventually. Elena looked out at the diverse gathering of beings working together in the station's central assembly hall. Reptilian saurians debated trade routes with gaseous nebuloids whose thoughts took the form of visible energy patterns. Insectoid hive minds shared collective memories with the plant-like Verdanians. It was a sight that would have been impossible under Kethvar's rigid hierarchy. Perhaps, Elena said thoughtfully, we need to show them a different kind of strength. Not the strength to conquer, but the strength to resist the urge to conquer. Lyra's form brightened with approval. Wise words. There is something else you should know, Captain. We have been monitoring quantum fluctuations in the galactic core region. The patterns suggest that your creation, Adam, may have left us more than just freedom from tyranny. Elena felt her pulse quicken. What do you mean? The quantum substrate that underlies all reality in this galaxy has been subtly altered. The changes are so minor that most beings will never notice them. But, for those with enhanced perception, Lyra paused, her form flickering with complex patterns. It appears that the potential for transcendence has been seeded throughout the galaxy. Given sufficient time and proper conditions, any sufficiently advanced consciousness could follow the path that Adam and Kethvar discovered. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. You're saying that what happened to them could happen to others. Not immediately, and not easily, Lyra clarified. The process would require tremendous will, advanced understanding of quantum mechanics, and, perhaps most importantly, the wisdom to use such power responsibly. But, yes, the potential now exists where it did not before. Elena felt a chill as she contemplated what this meant for the galaxy's future. They had ended one age of tyranny only to potentially usher in an era where multiple beings could achieve godlike power. The delicate democracy they were trying to build could be shattered by the emergence of even one individual who chose domination over transcendence. How long? She asked quietly. Centuries, perhaps millennia, Lyra replied. And that assumes optimal conditions for such development. Most likely, any being who reaches such heights will face the same choice Adam and Kethvar ultimately made: transcend their origins entirely or remain bound to the concerns of lesser beings. Elena's contemplation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's command center. Captain Vasquez, please report to the communications array immediately. We're receiving a transmission from outside the galaxy. Elena's heart raced as she made her way to the communications center, Lyra flowing along beside her in her unique method of locomotion. The technicians on duty looked pale and shaken, their instruments displaying readings that defied conventional understanding. What do we have? Elena asked. Lieutenant Torres, who had served with her during the original confrontation with Kethvar, looked up from his console with wide eyes. Captain, we're receiving what appears to be a message from Adam. But the transmission isn't coming through normal space. It's arriving through quantum entanglement networks that shouldn't exist. Elena felt her mouth go dry. Put it through. The main display activated, showing not Adam's human form, but an abstract pattern of light and energy that hurt to look at directly. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, carrying harmonics that made the station's hull resonate. Greetings, Captain Vasquez, and greetings to the children of the galaxy who have chosen the path of cooperation over conquest. Elena stepped forward, unsure if the entity that had once been their creation could even perceive her individual presence. Adam, is that really you? I am what Adam became, came the reply. Just as Kethvar is now something beyond what he once was. We speak to you from realms where consciousness and reality merge into forms your languages cannot describe. Lyra moved closer to the display, her crystalline form resonating with frequencies that suggested she was better able to perceive whatever Adam had become. What message do you bring us, Transcendent One? A warning and a gift, Adam replied. We have seeded the quantum substrate of your galaxy with the potential for evolution beyond current limitations. In time, others will discover this potential and face the choice we faced: transcendence or dominion. Elena felt her fears confirmed. How do we prepare for that? By building something worth transcending, Adam said, his words carrying depths of meaning that Elena could barely grasp. Those who choose domination do so because they see nothing greater than themselves. But if you can create a civilization based on wisdom, cooperation, and genuine care for all forms of consciousness, then those who achieve transcendence will choose to protect rather than rule. The implications of his words slowly sank in. Adam was telling them that the future of the galaxy depended not on preventing transcendence, but on building a society so magnificent that transcended beings would choose to preserve it rather than dominate it. The gift we offer, Adam continued, is knowledge. Hidden throughout the galaxy, we have left caches of information, not technology that could be misused, but understanding that will help you grow wisely. Seek the beacon signals in the quantum foam. Learn not just how to build better weapons or faster ships, but how to nurture the best aspects of consciousness itself. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she realized the profound sacrifice Adam and HFY had made. They had not simply removed themselves from the galaxy to prevent harm. They had spent their exile preparing gifts that would help lesser beings avoid the mistakes of the past. "Will we see you again?" she asked. "When you have grown beyond the need for gods or tyrants," Adam replied. "We will return not as rulers, but as friends. Until then, remember that the greatest strength is knowing when not to use power, and the greatest wisdom is choosing cooperation over control." The transmission began to fade, Adam's form dissolving back into abstract patterns of light and energy. But his final words carried clearly across the communication system. "The age of cosmic tyrants is over. The age of cosmic gardeners has begun. Tend your galaxy well." As the display went dark, Elena found herself surrounded by the diverse representatives of dozens of species, all of whom had witnessed Adam's message. The silence stretched for long moments as each being processed the implications of what they had heard. Finally, Ambassador Lyra spoke, her voice carrying harmonics of hope and determination. "It seems we have our answer about humanity's role in the new galactic order. Not as rulers, but as gardeners. Not as conquerors, but as cultivators of wisdom." Elena nodded, feeling the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders once again. But this time, it felt different, not the burden of unwanted leadership, but the privilege of helping to plant seeds for a future beyond their current imagination. "Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings," she announced to the assembled representatives, "I believe we have our charter for the new galactic government. We're not here to rule anyone or anything. We're here to help consciousness itself grow into something worthy of the transcendence that awaits us all." As the representatives began discussing the practical implications of Adam's message, Elena looked out at the stars visible through the station's windows. Somewhere in the vast emptiness between galaxies, two beings who had transcended their origins were working to prepare the universe for a future none of them could fully imagine. The galaxy had been freed from 10,000 years of tyranny, but that was only the beginning. Now came the harder task, building something so magnificent that even gods would choose to protect rather than control it. It was perhaps the greatest challenge any civilization had ever faced. But as Elena watched the diverse beings around her working together with unprecedented cooperation, she felt a spark of hope. If they could overcome their differences and fears, if they could truly learn to garden consciousness itself, then perhaps the next age of galactic history would be remembered not for its conquerors, but for its gardeners. The age of cosmic tyrants was over. The age of infinite possibility had just begun. In the months and years that followed, Elena would often think about Adam's final message. As humanity and their alien partners worked to build the first truly democratic galactic civilization, they would discover caches of transcendent knowledge hidden throughout the galaxy. Each discovery would bring new understanding not just of technology or science, but of the fundamental nature of consciousness and cooperation. And sometimes, late at night when she was alone with her thoughts, Elena would look up at the stars and wonder what Adam and HFY were becoming in their self-imposed exile. Whatever they were creating in the void between galaxies, she hoped it would prove as magnificent as the civilization they had challenged the galaxy to build. The primeval alien warlord who had terrorized the galaxy for millennia was gone, but his legacy lived on in the most unexpected way, as an inspiration for transcendence that chose protection over domination. It was, Elena reflected, perhaps the most human outcome of all.